Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrology with me, Anna Isabel, and my guest today, Kate Hubert. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Anna. It's nice to be with you.
Now, you've written this beautiful book, The Body of Stars, Astrology and the Wisdom of the Body. And you notice I did use the word beautiful, didn't you? Because that's how I feel about it. The way you've written it is, it's not just informative, it's poetic. I love it. So I'm
nice
that you're here today. And as I often do, I thought I'd have a look at your chart to begin with. And you know, the first thing that struck me, in fact, it struck me when I was reading the book, is because you talk about it now. You call it the body of stars, and it's about the wisdom of the body. So it's very much a physical thing. Yeah. But then there are parts in it in which you're talking about the body being a medium of consciousness. It's a connection. It's something that helps us become a part of the natural world. It's an interface between worlds. And I think when I was reading that, I hadn't yet seen your chart, and I was thinking, this is very earthy. And I was thinking that there's something very, for me, it was Taurus. It wasn't Capricorn. It wasn't Virgo, because it's not just about health in that analytical Virgo way.
No, it's not.
It's about what it is to be physical, what it is to have a body, and how that connects us and embeds us into the very world that we live in. So that screams to me of Taurus. And so what have I found? I found the North Node in Taurus.
Yeah. And it's been such a struggle in my life to even know that I had a body. I think I functioned for years, almost, just in the mind, totally in the mind. And of course, that leads to really intense suffering. I'm sure that we've all had experiences of what our minds can do, especially in the middle of the night. And just how disconnected, the poverty of being disconnected from the body and from the greater body. I mean, for me, Earth is the planet of manifestation. This is where beings come to experience life in an embodied world. And yet, in our part of the world, at this point in the world's turning, we seem to have completely neglected the value of being in the physical and see it as a sort of inconvenient adjunct to our wonderful, brilliant minds, which take us where, like into fantasy a lot of the time. Or
you're right. And it's funny because as I was listening to you, I was thinking about the medieval denial of the body as well, for religious reasons. So, there you're denying the body because, it's a source of pleasure, and pleasure is the road to ruination and the devil and temptation, etc. And so you mortify the body. So it's all about denial of the body. And then we progress into denying the body yet again, because it's now an inconvenience to our vision. So have we moved further forward? I'm not entirely sure. I think we're still missing the point. And the point
it's not quite the same, is it? We're at another spiral. I mean, for most of us, it hasn't got that strong religious overlay, or that's not conscious. I think it's in our backgrounds. It was very strong in my background. I came from a Baptist family. So there, it's like, oh, don't have anything too colorful, it will excite the senses and stuff like that. So there was a real fear actually of the body. And a kind of disgust about the body, which I think is very much in our culture, even if it's overlaid with a mental attitude, or, you know, in a sense, we're negatively obsessed with the body, aren't we? Especially in terms of, you know, procedures and interventions that people are going for now. Even healthy, beautiful young people are wanting to modify their bodies in all kinds of, to me, really strange ways. So it's almost got fetishized because it's not integrated. Our consciousness, our thoughts and our feelings and our will is not integrated with the body. It's so separated that we are now avatars of ourselves.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Yeah, it's and that's what I was thinking when I was listening to you, is have we progressed? We've gone from this religious denial to a whole kind of other form of denial, and of course whatever we're denying shouts louder, and you know, our attention becomes negatively focused on it. So it was very interesting to find this North Node in Taurus, because it really speaks of a journey to understand what it means to be physical and how important that is. Because once we understand our physicality and we work with it and accept it, then we are in fact very connected and much more attuned to the world that we live in, and the fact that we are a part of nature, that it's not something separate to us. So this, I thought, was a very beautiful thing to find, that North Node in Taurus there. I think you're very much on your path, aren't you?
Yeah, I feel I am, through embracing this side of things. And I feel that with Uranus taking its journey through Taurus now, you know, one of the most positive aspects of that is unfolding the inspiration of the physical, of sensation, you know, hearing the body speak, whether it's the body of the earth or the body of the beings we share the earth with, or our own bodies. You know, it feels like it opens up, it liberates some impulse to understand the articulation that happens through the physical. And of course, that is a difficult thing to understand. It's a bit like reading a birth chart, because the body speaks symbolically. It doesn't speak in a straightforward, oh, my finger hurts, therefore, you know, it's much more elusive and oblique. And I think our approaches have to be poetic and symbolic, and a bit like we try and understand a dream or a birth chart, you know, or a painting. We need to be associative and intuitive in our thinking. And I believe that Uranus is opening that possibility up as it goes through Taurus.
Well, interestingly, you're just coming up for the North Node to conjunct your North Node as well. So I think you'll probably be getting more insight very shortly.
Well, you know, there's a lot of momentum behind this work for me. You know, I'm already imagining the next book, which will be perhaps even more focused on the body than this.
Yes, I can really see that. It struck me as interesting too that you were talking about having felt very disconnected from your body, and of course you've got this moon in Gemini. And the reason I thought that was interesting is because moon in Gemini, it's not just a disconnection from the body, but it's also very often a disconnection from feeling, because everything becomes very rational. And I think that's significant because there is a real link. We call it the mind-body connection, but actually it's the feeling-body connection, because and yes, it's true that our thoughts do influence our bodies, but what is missing when we say that is the understanding that our feelings drive our thoughts. So ultimately, it's all about the suppression of feelings, or perhaps the over-rationalization of feelings. And I think the moon in Gemini can be really good at doing that, because it's always wanting, the rational over the feeling.
Yeah, there's this real focus on, I will be safe and comfortable if only I can get my point across, or have a really good conversation, or just understand it, like just map it out, then I'll be okay. And I think, thoughts, we can feel how thoughts grip our bodies. And, I think if there's a thought, there's always a sensation with it. And there's always an emotion with it. They're separate in our understanding, but actually they don't function independently, do they? There's always an emotional content to a thought, and there's always a physical content to a thought. And, and they reinforce each other. If I'm afraid, I will develop a thinking strategy around that, and then I'll start reacting emotively to that strategy, or and so it goes on, and we sort of banish a lot of our energy to the realms of fantasy, I think, a lot of the time, because of our failure to actually calm the nervous system down. And I think Gemini really represents how the nervous system is functioning. And I especially as a younger person, I really enjoyed the quick fire nature of my nervous system, and I didn't realize that it was that ability to think quickly and see patterns quickly and get very excited intellectually was also making me feel very ungrounded and very unsafe.
I was just thinking of a couple of things. The first is you have the Sun and Mars in Aries, and you were talking about quick fire, and of course, what better description for Aries. But interestingly, the thing I would say though about fire is that it's also about feeling. It's different from water, but it's very much a feeling element as well, because you're in that moment. We associate the word passion with fire. What's passion? It's feeling. And if we think about the sun as being what we are developing into, so you've got this north node in Taurus, which is all about the physical, and then you've got the sun in Aries moving towards that connection with feeling. It's very different from Gemini, even though it's masculine energy and there's lots in common. It's also very, very different.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't framed it like that before, so that's kind of I need to let that sink down.
Yeah. So and while we're on the subject of fire, you have Sagittarius on the cusp of your sixth, because then of course I was curious about your sixth.
I usually use Koch houses, so in that I get Capricorn on my sixth.
Well, I like Sagittarius on your sixth because Sagittarius operates at that symbolic level. And I think that your approach to health as it being all about understanding the body's symptoms at a symbolic level is very Sagittarius. And then I notice, of course, Jupiter in Gemini wanting that communication link between the mind and the body. And it's sitting in the 12th as I see it. And so there's that link again to understanding things at the subconscious level. So for me, this chart speaks very much as a mirror of what your approach is. So I like that.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I see all of that in the 9th house as well, with the Chiron, Saturn, Mercury business going on there. But it's interesting, isn't it? Astrology always brings the same theme in multiple ways through a chart. Yeah. Whatever house system you use, those themes will out and keep echoing each other. And
fail-safe mechanism.
yeah.
Um, so let's talk a little bit more about your book then, because one of the, so straight away, I mean, I was only reading the foreword and I was already excited. So that was a good, a good sign. And one of the reasons I was excited by that was because you started off by talking about Nut, the Egyptian sky goddess. Tell us a little bit about Nut and then explain why it was that she became important to you in this context.
Well, Nut stands over the earth, and she's the cosmos, if you like, and she's this arc. She stands over in this sort of downward dog pose over the earth, in this kind of sheltering, mothering, beautiful gesture of protection from the chaos beyond. And her body is filled with stars. So she's a body of stars, just as our little bodies are filled with stars, as well as the signs that rule each part of the body. And so it was a lovely reflection of this kind of microcosmic view of the body of stars, to see arching over the earth. And every night the sun sinks down into the underworld and is born again in the morning. It travels through her body and comes out of her mouth. And you know, this beautiful beautiful sort of dark blue stillness that is the mantle in which we live, move, and have our being here on earth. And the Egyptians thought that our souls would go back and become a star in the body of Nut upon deaths. So she's this great mother goddess, and it feels like she's a really lovely counterbalance to the kind of Gaia, the sense of the earth goddess as well. So that's, yeah, that was the inspiration of Nut. And of course, she's the Milky Way. And if you look at the Milky Way, that's this kind of arch or arcing pathway through the heavens above us. So yeah, it felt like a lovely place to begin.
How do you feel that connects to symbolically to the body as we experience it?
Gosh, it feels like that's the archetype. There's the archetype, there's the macrocosm, there is the sort of inspiration of this cosmic mother in whom everything is held, everything comes from her, everything returns to her. There's this wholeness and completeness. And I think in our deep selves, there is wholeness and integration and completeness. We don't lack, you know, everything is born out of us and everything dies into us. So it feels like it's just a lovely mirror that we're a little shard of that kind of cosmic beingness. And that's the shard of our spirits, the shard of our souls, which inspires our journey through this strange and difficult earth realm.
I liked that because I thought it was a really lovely description of the physical side of us in relation to the cosmos. It was a different way of saying as above, so below. And I really like the approach to the fact that our bodies themselves are this mini galaxy.
Yeah.
We know already that in many ways they are an ecosystem in its own right. So I liked that. It fitted really nicely with everything that I understand.
And I also like it because it feels like we belong. You know, we're connected to this. We belong. We're a part of it. We're a part of this becoming. We're important here, and we belong here. We belong to each other, and we belong to this cosmos.
So where does astrology fit in to all of this? How is it that astrology can help us to better understand what's going on in our bodies?
I think, well, because each zone of the body is ruled by a sign, and each process of the body is ruled by a planet, our bodies just keep reflecting our planetary challenges. So our birth charts kind of live in our bodies, and when I look at a birth chart, I'm often looking for the dilemma. What's the difficulty here? You know, what's the nub? So that, because it's through these difficulties and dilemmas that consciousness is excited to grow. And so the main challenges of the birth chart that perhaps are hardest to bring into consciousness will often arise through the body and be expressed through the body. So we can look at the rulership of the part of the body in which that problem is arising, or look at the birth chart and see what planetary energies are stuck there, and that would point us towards how that might be resolved. And often the physical symptoms will arise in several different ways. For example, a Mercury-Mars conjunction might create intestinal problems, and equally eczema or something like that. And often both of those things a person might have. If they find it hard to come to consciousness about the nature of what that conjunction is trying to bring about in their lives. So it feels like astrology can then help us decode the symbolism of what's arising through the body, so that we can resolve it or gain some wisdom from it.
Very interesting. You should talk about Mercury, Mars, and you were talking about eczema, because I had in early December Mars oppose my Mercury, and what transpired, actually it wasn't Mercury, it was Mars opposing Mars. I'm sorry, stand corrected. But what transpired was an outbreak of eczema that I haven't had for a very long time. And it was a period in which I would say I acquired a new skin, because it was like my entire face was on fire. It felt like it. And I remember at the time I hadn't been paying too much attention to what was going on, because I had been busy. So I hadn't noticed this Mars transit coming up until I felt the fire on my face. And my first thought was, am I going through a Mars transit? And then I thought, oh, I bet it's opposite my Mars right now. And there it was, Mars opposite my Mars. And of course, there were things that I was dealing with. And then I felt I acquired a new skin, which is actually very important, because it felt like a huge moment of revelation for me. And it was very, very pertinent. So I think that was a very good example of something very recent involving Mars, which I don't associate Mars with the skin, but I do associate it with fire. And I think I'm just glad I didn't have an infection of some kind. So.
Yeah, the skin's a really good place to do that sort of processing, isn't it? It's the safest place in the body. And of course, if you suppress the eczema, you will often drive that Mars function deeper into the body, where it's less likely to be so manageable. So it's quite a good thing to happen. And of course, this is the part of the body ruled by Aries and Mars as well, isn't it? And it's the part of our bodies that shows that this is the part we cannot hide, our faces. You know, we can sort of sit on our hands if we've got eczema on our hands, or conceal it under our clothes, but something was really wanting to show, wasn't it? And
Indeed,
show
and
to you and show to others.
and so it was a time of healing, and that was very, very interesting. So this is exactly what we're talking about, and as you said, the thing to not do is suppress. And all too often, what we want to do is eliminate the symptoms.
Yeah.
So our bodies are trying to tell us something.
Yeah. And I think we tend to be like that with any kind of difficulty that arises in our lives, don't we? Something arises, we don't like it because it makes us uncomfortable, or it challenges the status quo in some way. We get very allergic, we try and suppress it, we try and shove it out the way. And actually that's consciousness awakening, isn't it? When something's not flowing easily, then we have a chance to rethink and review and change. And I think when something comes through the body, yeah, we don't want it. We don't see it as, oh, something's alive in me. Some part wants to be included. There's something coming home. I mean, it could be something coming up in order to come to consciousness and never bother us again. You know, there can be clearings that happen through the body quite miraculously. But we want to suppress them. We don't want to be inconvenienced. And so it feels almost like we just want to go back to sleep again. And I think this is the usefulness of an approach like astrology, which can say, don't go back to sleep. Actually, something really interesting is happening. Your Uranus function is awakening. This could be, open up to new possibilities, the old ways changing. So yeah, we're such habitual creatures. And I think that very gesture of wanting to stay in our habits actually makes the body more and more insistent. And of course, that can be very bad for us if we do it chronically.
The first time I came across the concept that symptoms are something to be heard was when somebody handed me Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life.
I thought you were going to say that.
I saw in your face, you knew exactly what was coming. And I just, at that point, I think I was in the very early stages of learning astrology. And of course, as the years, progress, of course, then I become a hypnotherapist as well. So I'm very aware of the impact that emotions have on health, and how thoughts also play their part, and the emotional energy that drives thoughts, etc. So that's part of it. And then of course, as I became, more of an astrologer and understood transits, etc. Now it's about working with the energy of the planets and how to make the most of the energy, even when it looks like, it's a steamroller coming down the hill about to crush. So it's all the same idea, isn't it? And what you've done is you've taken the two and you've kind of synthesized them. So you're looking at how best to use transits in order to understand what's going on with the body as well. So tell us a little bit about how to use your book.
Well, I think it helps if how I approach a chart, say, that might be the easiest place to start. Somebody tells me they've got some physical stuff going on, and I ask them to describe it to me. And then I just try and create and elaborate a picture, a symptom picture. And almost imagine, you know, what is going on. Some, you know, if there's like an intestinal problem and there's bloating and gas and cramps, I think, well, bloating, that's moon-like. Cramps, that's Uranian. Pain, that's Martian. So I sort of elaborate a picture and bring some astrological significators to the picture. And then you can look at the chart and see what the main features of the chart are, and try and get the developmental context of the chart. What is this person becoming? What do they know very well from other lifetimes? What are they being denied repetition of? You know, why can't they stay in their habits of old, which in my view would be described by Saturn and the moon? But I think you can find those patterns through various other means as well. And so you can see what they're trying to break out into, looking at the sun and the north node and the ascendant very often. And so get a sense of the dilemma, and then how does this health problem promote consciousness about the dilemma? And very often, if you ask somebody for timings of when their symptoms got worse or when they first arose, then you'll be able to find the trigger through the transit. And that can help you understand, just through your understanding of that planetary principle that's triggered something, that can help you understand how this thing might be resolved. It seems very often that a T-square or a yod or something of that kind, some major feature of the chart, will manifest the physical problems. And I suppose that's because that's one of the most challenging, difficult areas of the chart. So yeah, it's interesting how often it gets traced back to that. And then you can just work with that T-square or whatever and figure out how can that function more harmoniously? How can we help that person get a handle on what is trying to arise in consciousness? And that's the difficult thing, because when it's to do with overcoming conditioning, just pointing out the conditioning doesn't help very much. So we have to find oblique ways of feeling into and opening into sensation in the body, and drawing in the intuitions that are coming through astrology. But I think it helps actually to work physically as well, to come into movement and to do some inquiry work and things like that, so that people can come more circuitously to the thing that's troubling them.
And I think what we're talking about is the difference between healing and say curing. You know, because if you've got somebody who comes to you and they've got cancer, what they're hoping for is the cure. And of course, we can't do that. That's not what we do. But what you can do is open up the healing process that then works with whatever cure they're pursuing in terms of allopathic medicine.
Yeah.
That might make the difference then between the treatment they're receiving being effective, not effective, and effective would be being, I guess, almost in a permanent remission, which is what everybody would be looking for, or being able to come to terms with, if they're at a very advanced stage of the illness and the prognosis is not good, being able to help them to heal so that they are at peace. So this is the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that this approach is it's about dispelling fear, and it's about coming to understanding. So I have I mean, this is where astrology is so brilliant. I have a context for understanding my life. I have an ability to have an overview. which allows me to be compassionate with all aspects of myself. And that helps me move away from fear. And I think it's fear reactions which are really, really devastating in the body.
And actually, it's interesting because what's also come to mind listening to you is, you know, I want to say your body is not your enemy.
No, it's so not. And it feels to me like this soulful creature trying to reach out to the minds and the emotions, saying, but please don't forget about this part. Please, it's our bodies want to come into wholeness, they want to every part of them wants to be alive and to be animated by soul. You know, our souls want to be able to flow throughout our beings, and a negative thought or feeling, because it's not very conscious, can lodge in the body and stop that flow. So when the body signals that something's blocking the flow of energy, pure energy, which is life-giving, then the body will begin to express it. So we do really well just to listen. And of course, symptoms in the body, even minor symptoms, can be really disconcerting and frightening. So I think a lot of what this approach can do is to sort of like step back from those reactions and that desire to get rid of the symptom, because something's coming alive, and we can get interested in that, and we can use our intuition and our intelligence to explore that, and that will be meaningful. It will be full of personal meaning for us. And even if we can't get rid of the symptom, the meaning will stay with us and affect our consciousness, affect our understanding, affect our ability to be accepting of our situation in life. And I think that in itself is a huge step of progress compared to being in a state of fear and alienation from the body. You know, our bodies are really on our side.
Well, you talk in your book about the body being an interface between our inner selves and the outside world. And I feel that your book is like a bridge that helps us to connect with our bodies and understand them better. And for that, I thank you. And thank you for your time being with us here today.
It's lovely to speak with you, Anna. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all for watching. Next time, we're going to be dipping back into karmic astrology. Until then, do subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in, and I will always reply. Now, I will also be putting a link into the description box for Kate's book. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
It's probably best through, I have a blog, arwenastrology.wordpress.com, or my email address is probably the best place. That's arwenastro, AWEN astro @gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kate. And thank you again. And until next time, goodbye.